Hi, I'm Barry Ostrowski. At Barnabas Health, we believe citizens need to be informed about the important healthcare issues affecting their lives. That's why we're proud to support healthcare programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners on public television.
Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by Adler Aphasia Center, helping stroke and brain injury survivors recover their speech. RWJ Barnabas Health, Seton Hall University, where leaders learn. PSE&G, committed to improving New Jersey's economy and strengthening its communities. New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. NJM, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and more, with a focus on safety and financial stability. And by Josh S. Weston.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. It's my pleasure to introduce, we haven't had him in a while, but we're glad to have him right now. He's John Gallucci, Chairman, New Jersey Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, and the President and CEO of JAG Physical Therapy. Good to see you, John.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
You've dedicated your life to not just physical fitness, but making sure that athletes, particularly young athletes, are taken care of. Why?
Well, as an athletic trainer, physical therapist throughout my entire career, the goal is to keep people healthy and try to keep them out of the office. And if we can keep children playing on the field instead of in an office getting treatment, that was one of the most important things for me when I originally built the business. As you know, the business has grown tremendously, that we're treating the entire demographic of the lifespan of health. And literally now we take care of everybody throughout the entire lifespan at JAG Physical Therapy.
Talk about JAG a little bit before we talk about the council, which is so important.
Sure.
Who is coming to JAG and what are they coming there for?
So JAG Physical Therapy is an outpatient orthopedic sport physical therapy company that ultimately takes care of the entire lifespan from newborns. We have a pediatric, 2 pediatric centers throughout the state, and then we go all the way up to our oldest patient was 100 years old. And we like to say that we take care of everybody as a VIP, or as you know, I come out of the professional sports world, we treat everybody as a VIP athlete. And everybody gets the same attention, everybody gets the same care, and that's the most important thing that we've built, as you know, the business off of.
Talk about some of the professional sports teams you've been affiliated with.
So I'm the physical therapist with the New Jersey Devils, the Red Bulls. I was their head athletic trainer for many years, and then the commissioner brought me into the offices of Major League Soccer to assist running the medical. So I'm basically the medical coordinator for Major League Soccer that oversees all 20 of our teams throughout the country, the health and welfare of our athletes.
Real quick, are we, I know this is a general question, generalized question, are too many young athletes overtraining certain parts of their body to the point where it's causing problems long term?
It's a fantastic question. I'm asked that all the time. And it's whether or not, you know, we try to separate sports now, which we didn't do as kids when we were.
Played everything.
Right. We played everything. And what we noticed, and research is showing us, is multi-directional individuals have less opportunity to get injury.
As opposed to the repetitive.
As opposed to the repetitive. So when you're picking one sport and playing it for 12 months, that repetition becomes an overuse, that overuse becomes an injury. So research is showing us that multi-sport athletes get injured less. So we're trying to get the education to the parents and to the coaches to say multi-sport, multi-direction training and sports are very important to keep your child out of the doctor's office or out of the physical therapist.
Tell us about you being the chairman of the New Jersey Council on Physical Fitness and Sports. You decided to jump in and help out and really build this organization, this council, and make something special. Why?
Well, the New Jersey Council on Physical Fitness and Sports has been around since 1999. And they've had several chairmen in the past that have done great jobs based on what was going on in healthcare in New Jersey at that time. Currently, as you know, we're having major issues throughout the entire lifespan. We have geriatric patients or people in the state, people above 55 years old, 60 years old, that are getting slips and falls at home. There's no prevention programs. We have issues with child sports, as we just discussed. Injuries are dramatic. Each and every day, kids are getting hurt. We have issues with nutrition throughout our adolescent children that are increasing obesity rates and diabetes. So I've been part of the council for 10 years. Unfortunately, about a year and a half ago, our chair had passed away. And the council kind of sat a little bit dormant, and the members of the council kind of asked me, and the state asked me, to kind of revitalize.
They didn't kind of ask you, they asked you.
They asked me. So to kind of revitalize it, and lucky enough in May, I was nominated by the remaining council to become the chair. And the goal in the last 5 months was not only to revitalize it, but to get a meeting immediately with the Department of Health Commissioner Bennett and see what her initiatives are. And one of her huge initiatives is population health, taking care of the entire population and trying to get a message out of education to everybody throughout the lifespan. And what we also had to do was build out the remainder of the council, and we brought in some unbelievable people from RWJ Barnabas, from Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, from the NFL. We've got 3 Super Bowl winners that are now council members in Carl Banks, Bart Oates, and Sean O'Hara. We have unbelievable executives that are in each division, from the physical therapy organization, the American Physical Therapy Association in New Jersey, the Athletic Training Society of New Jersey. We have the recreation departments involved. We have the physical education
Why is that all
departments.
important to building the council?
Well, it's important to have every type of individual, from nutrition to fitness to wellness to overall health, to help make New Jersey healthy. And this council gets together and we come up with initiatives to try to support the mission of Commissioner Bennett and get the word out to get New Jersey healthy.
Just help me understand this. To get the word out, because one of the biggest problems in New Jersey, and we've been in this business for a long time, and New Jersey's not a media market. We got New York, we got Philadelphia, and we have this great public broadcasting operation, NJTV, that we're a part of, but we're not a media market. We've got these entities on both ends, New York and Philadelphia. How challenging is it to get that word out?
It's very difficult. You know, plus the state has always been program development oriented. Where I'm coming in from being a president of a corporation that
marketing and branding.
That came from nothing. Basically, it was me in a room treating patients, and now we're fortunate that we have 12 centers throughout New York and New Jersey, and the goal is to grow to 15 centers within the next 2 years. But ultimately, it's about being a resource. And the only way you can be a resource is to get the communication
People
out
need to
there.
know you're there.
100%.
Or they can't use you.
We've never had an engaging social media platform, which we just kicked off 3 weeks ago. Under my leadership and the council's teamwork, we were able to do it with the roles of each council members with their own individual media outlets. We're basically now hitting 16 council members' media outlets, social media outlets, to try to get the word out. Don't think I'm not going to use your show's media outlet to try to get it out in your social media, to try to
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, to try to get the message out to make New Jersey healthy. And we need to start at the grassroots level. We need to get in front of people. We need to let them know. Sports safety, RWJ Barnabas is trying for 12 years on sports safety.
Sure.
As you know, I was one of their lead instructors.
Matt Morahan did, right?
The Morahan Center.
Right.
I'm one of the lead instructors. I've been educating for years. We need more parents engaged.
Well, what's the message to parents in the last minute left? What's the message right now?
Parents have to get engaged in the welfare and health of their children, but they also have to get engaged in the health and welfare of themselves. Parents have to start taking care of themselves. We're all working too many hours, and we don't put any time in for ourselves, and then we end up with high cholesterol, we end up with type 2 diabetes, we end up with blood pressure issues. If we take 30 to 40 minutes every day for ourselves, let it be during lunch, let it be at your desk chair, you can prevent injuries and illness across the entire lifespan.
You can't be telling kids what to do if you're not doing it yourself.
Correct.
John Gallucci, Jr. is the chairman of the New Jersey Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, which is a lot more active and out there than it ever was before, and also the president and CEO of JAG Physical Therapy. Thank you so much, John. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. Great stuff, John.
Thanks.
To watch more Caucus New Jersey, find us online and follow us on social media.
Steve Adubato, it is my honor to talk to, once again, our good friend, Rodger DeRose, President and Chief Executive Officer of Kessler Foundation. Rodger, there's a crowd gathering here in West Orange, New Jersey for this extraordinary event, Life After Stroke, Innovations in Research, Reclaiming Life and Regaining Independence. Talk about this conference.
Well, Steve, you know, we focus on changing the lives of people with disabilities, and stroke is just one of the many areas that we focus on. Tonight's event is really going to be centered on the cognitive issues that stroke patients have and the medical interventions that we have brought forward to be used from a translational point of view right into patient care here at Kessler Institute, and then rolling it out through the state of New Jersey and around the country. And we're also going to do that in the area of mobility for paralysis related to stroke as well. Two very, very significant issues for stroke patients.
Rodger, let's put this in perspective. 7 million Americans dealing with stroke have had a stroke. But life after stroke, put that in perspective. What are people dealing with?
Sure. Yeah, you know, Steve, this whole issue of spatial neglect, which is a cognitive issue related to stroke, where there's an absence of leftness with a right brain stroke, if that goes undiagnosed, it means that individuals are missing this whole side of their life. And that is something that we're bringing to the party here. And then there's issues related to mobility as well, issues related to aphasia, the ability to speak. And what it means is, how do those folks integrate with their family, with the community, and back to the workplace if they're still of working age?
Kessler Foundation, your role in this?
Our role is to focus on new medical interventions that can be used right in patient care and bring it to patient care as effectively and efficiently as possible, so that we can test those interventions here at Kessler Institute in the care centers, and then roll them out and disseminate that information nationwide and worldwide.
So for people who actually, you talked about spatial, give that term again?
Spatial neglect.
For people who are not properly diagnosed, who have spatial neglect, this whole left side, they're not seeing what the rest of us see. They're not able to navigate and negotiate, right?
Exactly. It's almost as though the brain's GPS system, Steve, misses the left side. So if you were to ask them to look at a clock and then draw that clock, they would draw half of it. They would draw the right-hand side. That's what spatial neglect is. And the seriousness of that issue, if it goes undiagnosed and you put a stroke patient behind the wheel of a car, imagine the issues that they would have driving into traffic, for example, or missing and taking a fall and re-injuring themselves in terms of breaking a hip or something even more catastrophic.
Thank you, Rodger.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Audrey Cebulski is a Prism goggles participant. Let me tell you something about Audrey. Retired real estate agent, mother, grandmother, and there's a misprint. It says she's a great-grandmother who survived her first stroke at the age of 82, born and raised in the Bronx. At 80, she completed a 5K race with her family by her side. Soon after, had her first stroke that changed your life. Describe it.
Oh, yes, how it changed it. I lost all my independence. I can't drive. I haven't driven. I was unaware of anything from the left side. My whole left side went weak, and it was non-existent. And I'm just regaining all my independence again.
Audrey talks about the left side, this whole not being able to see on the left side. This particular condition is dealt with by these prism goggles. What are they like for you when you put them on?
They were just like looking through a regular glass. I really didn't see a difference, except it was sort of split up. You know, the vision was split up. But I guess it must have been pulling me to the side or something. I really don't know. All I know is it made a tremendous difference. I became aware of things on the left, which I never was before.
Just by putting these goggles on, it made all that difference?
Wearing them, I mean, every day she came and put them on me, and I did a test with her.
Question. There are 7 million people dealing with strokes in this nation. Well, people like yourself who are healthy, work out, how do you keep such a positive, upbeat attitude dealing with what you're dealing with?
I want to get back to the way I was, and the only way I'm going to get back to the way I was is to work for it. Nothing comes easy. I have to work, I have to work to get to the way I was before. Nobody's just going to say, here's your left side back, here's your vision back, here's your driving ability back. Nobody's going to give that to you. You have to work for it. So anything that was offered to me, including the prism goggles, I accepted. If it helps me, I'll do it.
How did you even find out about these goggles?
I was in Kessler in Saddlebrook in the hospital. And I think it was one of the occupational therapists said I was a perfect candidate because I wasn't aware of anything to the left of me.
That's that whole spatial issue, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's spatial. And if I lost anything, I started to look on my left. It was always on my left. Wasn't even aware of it. Was not aware of it at all.
And that means there are a whole range of people, a significant number of people, I don't know the number, of people dealing with strokes, dealing with a stroke, who have this problem on the left side. They don't have the mobility. They don't see what the rest of us see. Dr. Barrett from here at Kessler is explaining this to us, and she said, your perspective is totally off. And so for you, you've gotten the advantage of seeing that. For others, they need to get access to it, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. It should be open for everybody that has that problem. You don't know you have the problem until you're made aware of it. I was made aware of it at the hospital.
What message would you want to give everybody else right now who's watching, who either has someone in their family dealing with a stroke, they're dealing with a stroke, but they've been affected by stroke?
I would say look into what's open for you. Look into what's available for you and try it. It can't hurt you. It's not something that's going to hurt you. It's something that's going to help you.
You're never giving up, are you?
Oh, me, no. Me. I'm too stubborn, ornery.
In a good way.
Oh, yeah, ask my family that.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
To see more Caucus New Jersey with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Simeon Schindelman is CEO, Brighton Health Plan Solutions, and he is with us today to talk about some big picture opportunities and challenges in the healthcare world. Good to see you, Simeon.
Appreciate being here, Steve.
Tell us what the organization really is.
Brighton Health Plan Solutions is a part of a business called Brighton Health Group. Brighton Health Group came out of the idea that if you combined the care delivery, we have a business next to mine that has to do with helping physicians deliver care. Combine that with health plan, kind of health care, health insurance, that the two working together, some collaboration would teach us about how health insurance and the delivery of care can both be improved. That's Brighton Health Group, and we're part of that in the health plan operation.
And two brands that would be, well, one particular, MagnaCare, a part of it.
MagnaCare is the biggest part of Brighton Health Plan Solutions, and it's one that's successful. It's been around for 25 years, well known across New York and New Jersey.
And Create is?
Create is a new venture for us. So we have the idea that we're moving into the commercial market. MagnaCare has historically been very successful and a major player in labor business, Taft-Hartley funds, union-oriented business. And we have some commercial business, traditional employers, but not as much as we think we'd like to have and should have. And so we're using a new platform, which we're finishing the building of right now, to enter the commercial market with Create.
Talk about this. You said that changes are being made, leading changes, that will be, quote, good for everybody. Make that case.
Well, part of the way that we look at this business is that supporting improvements in the world of healthcare require us to align the interests of every key player. We think our competition doesn't do that very well. We think there's an opening for us. So we think very hard about a variety of players in healthcare. The people who deliver care, doctors, hospitals, nurses, physician extenders. There's a world of people who deliver care. They're the people that receive care. We worry a great deal about them and their families, which I always want to be thinking about emphasizing. It's not only the person who needs care, it's the people around that person. It is health plans, businesses like ours. It's plan sponsors, an employer, a labor fund. They're also in this. And it's also agents and brokers and consultants who advise folks about what to do. It's even regulators. We work hard.
Government.
Absolutely. Government's a big player everywhere. They're a big player in healthcare. Let's recognize that and work with.
But here's the interesting thing to me as you lay that out. Everyone can win in this, as you're describing it, but devil's advocate. What happens when the goals of some of those entities conflict, you say?
Well, there are then the folks who maybe aren't willing to share the kind of goals that help each of the other players, maybe are folks who won't be participating in what we want to do. So when we think about Create at our company, and the reason we're building a brand new business platform for this is because we have some very specific ideas about how we can align interests. And the reality is some players, maybe there's some advisors, maybe some doctors or hospitals or plan sponsors won't feel good about that. But the ones who want to participate recognize that it's in their best interests to help other stakeholders. Those are the kind of partners that we'll have. And we're building that coalition already.
Does healthcare have to be as confusing as it sometimes seems to most of us?
There's no question it doesn't have to be. In fact, that's something that we're addressing. And I'd love to give you just a brief window into how we think about that.
Go ahead.
One of the core ideas or core observations that went into our design of the product we call Create, and that you'll hear about in the media and other ways soon, is that people tend to access care across a wide array of providers of care. So they may see many different physicians. Those physicians may be affiliated with many different hospitals or physician groups. And one of the very simple concepts that we started to learn about is that when we can have people seek care from a narrower range of providers, instead of going, my family goes to that hospital for one service, that other one unaffiliated for another service, if we can narrow that a little bit, that actually can reduce some confusion. Why is that? That's because the better clinical relationship I have with a doctor, with a hospital, the more that clinician, that office will know about me, the more data they'll have about me, the more they understand my personal preferences, the preferences of my family. That can help not only in how care is delivered, but it can also help in how I understand how to access healthcare and how to use my health insurance as well. Probably a little bit of a nuanced story in there, but the greater and deeper we can make the personal relationship I have with the people who provide care to me, meaning convincing me to see, frankly, a narrower range of care providers, that'll help in how well I understand what I need to do.
You and I are having a conversation recently over in New York in your offices about big picture healthcare issues. And one of the things that struck me was the need for consumers to get better educated themselves. It's important, isn't it?
Very important. Part of what we do, we think a real lot about that. Very few people access the healthcare system frequently. But many people do, just we don't all do it regularly, so we have to relearn each time. Part of what we're building, in fact, in our Create platform are tools that are very specific about educating folks about the choices they can make, the power they have, and the strength they have in their own decisions.
So let me try this. Talked about competition.
Well, competition for us is very, very major players. There are big players here in New Jersey and across the river in New York as well, and they're not successful without a reason for their success. So we've got to work very hard to be a new entrant in a difficult business and be able to actually win and be successful.
So when you see certain players, you're in a different arena, but certain players drop out of certain markets in New Jersey, does that, you say to yourself, wow, geez, do you see that as an opportunity?
Absolutely. For us, it typically would be an opportunity when somebody drops out. We have a team that is deep into health insurance. People like me, I've been in this business for 31 years. And I'm one of those people who really actually enjoys it. I enjoy trying to pull the string on this business and try to figure out how to make it better and more effective. When others can't or won't, that's simply space we can fill. And we like that.
So you see the creative, dare I use that term again, you see the creative possibilities here where someone might just say, it's a bottom line business, it's a numbers business, you say?
Well, certainly there is a business here. So I'm not going to deny that many players, us included, are in this as a business. But that doesn't mean that we can't be helping others be more successful at the same time. So we do believe there's a significant opportunity and a significant opening for not only better collaboration, but much more consistent, much more broad collaboration where we're taking into account the interests of the other players.
Last question. One of the topics we talked about offline was leadership. We're both fascinated by it. The number one lesson you have learned about leadership in your career would be, put you on the spot.
The number one lesson is a combination of two factors, listening and learning. And it sounds trite, it may sound like an old story, but I'm not a young man anymore, and I'm learning every single day. And I'm doing it because I work hard on listening. I'm not as good at listening as I need to be, and I'm not as good as I'm going to be tomorrow. But the better I can listen, and the more I'm going to learn. And again, sounds trite, sounds like I read it in an old book, and I probably did, but it should be in every new book as well.
And real quick, 20 seconds. Someone says, I have the answers. You say?
I say, I'm big on the idea of trust but verify. If you have the answers, I'm going to listen to you, but I'm going to ask you a lot of questions.
Simeon Schindelman is CEO, Brighton Health Plan Solutions, MagnaCare Create. And I want to thank you for joining us, and we appreciate it. We learned a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks, Simeon.
Great to be with you.
Good stuff.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence, and 13 for WNET, NJTV, and WHYY. Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by Adler Aphasia Center, RWJ Barnabas Health, Seton Hall University, PSE&G, New Jersey Sharing Network, NJM, and by Josh S. Weston. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey, and by Commerce Magazine. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. Caucus New Jersey has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.
Hi, I'm Peter Rooney. In 2006, I lost my father to renal disease. He was on the waiting list for a new kidney, but did not receive one in time. Unfortunately, so many like my father have lost their lives while waiting for a life-saving organ. At New Jersey Sharing Network, we're committed to saving and enhancing people's lives through organ and tissue donation and by informing people about this important decision. Because you can make a difference and save a life.